Boa tarde a todos e todas. Muito obrigada por estarem aqui prestigiando a palestra do Paul-Antoine Libourel. O Paul, eu vou até ler um pouquinho aqui da formação dele, porque é pouco usual para o Brasil, mas o Paul ele tem graduação em engenharia mecânica, mestrado em engenharia biomédica, doutorado em eletrônica, major em eletrônica, e ele fez, aliás, o doutorado, pós-graduação, I think it's a different kind of post-graduation in electronic imagery.
Yes, the master.
Is the master. E fez o doutorado em neuroscience, estudando principalmente filogenia do sono em tetrápodes. Atualmente o Paul ele é pesquisador do Center for Functional and Evolutionary Ecology em Montpellier, na França, e ele também é pesquisador associado do Neurosciences Research Center em Lyon. Então, ele vai falar um pouquinho das linhas de atuação para vocês, mas principalmente o foco é sono, né? Então, ele aborda a variação fenotípica ao longo dos grupos de animais e faz várias abordagens, né, nesse sentido, que eu acho que a palavra tem que ser dele para explicar um pouco melhor. So thank you, Paul, for staying here and do this talk for us. So, are you ready to start?
Thank you very much, Thais. Just for the pointer. Thank you very much, Thais, for inviting me. I'm very happy to be there. Really proud to show you what I've been doing in France, and really happy to share the collaboration of Gabriel's PhD with you. I learned a lot here, and I'm really happy to present you what I'm doing. So the idea of my talk is to provide you the background. Okay?
I will turn off.
So I will talk about sleep as you understood, and my idea is to provide you a broader view of what is sleep, how we can measure sleep, what is sleep in the different taxa, and how sleep is important for animals in terms of ecology, survival, and so on. So I will start by the first question: what is sleep? In terms of behavior, sleep is defined by specific posture and a sustained immobility. Another part of sleep could be a specific location. If we stick on these 2 points, we can't differentiate sleep from rest. So, is this lizard sleeping? Is this fish sleeping? We have no idea. And sleep and rest are very different behavior. That's why there is other traits that are associated with sleep. One, I don't know if the video will work, so I have to start it. Sorry. Another main and major point for sleep is the elevated arousal threshold, meaning that the animal is disconnected from the environment, and that this is really a major difference between rest. Animals that are resting are still connected and aware about the environment. This is not the case for sleep. Another major point for sleep is homeostatically regulated, meaning that if an animal is sleep deprived, he has to recover from it. There is an international need, an internal pressure for maintaining a certain amount of sleep. And these 2 points are very different, and this is the key points to make the difference between rest and sleep. Another point is sleep occurs on top of a circadian activity, meaning daily activity. Animal could be diurnal, crepuscular, nocturnal. It's not random, it's not opportunistic. There is an internal pressure based on the circadian rhythm of the animal, and sleep occurs on top of it. For sure, there is variation among posture, about specific locations, circadian activity, but basically this is the main traits that we use to identify sleep in animals. If we look at those traits within the different taxa, sleep has been identified in all the different species that has been studied to date. This includes mammals, birds, amphibians, reptiles, vertebrates, or all vertebrates, non-vertebrates. Invertebrates, I mean flatworms and also jellyfish, suggesting that even animals that do not have a centralized nervous system can have sleep. This together, if sleep is present in all those taxa, this suggests that sleep is an ancestral character present in every animal, suggesting that sleep provides important benefits for the animal survival or for the animal life. But what performance? What performance? What function? What are the functions? What are the roles of sleep? Those functions or the role of sleep has been assessed in only few taxa: humans, rats, cats, mouse, pigeon, Drosophila, or C. elegans worms. Only these few taxa has been properly studied to understand the function and the mechanism behind sleep. And what do they found from those studies? We think that sleep is associated with restorative process. Restorative process like protein synthesis, like improvement of the immune system. But sleep is also associated with developmental process. There is much more sleep during the development, suggesting that sleep is highly beneficial for growing, for development of the brain, development of the neuronal connection between somatosensory system and the brain. And finally, we also found, our researcher also found, that sleep was highly related to cognitive process. Memorization, forgetting, consolidation, management of emotional states. So sleep seems to be related to all that fields. But there is also people that propose to merge those functions into much more wider concept and propose that sleep could be related to energetical allocation. Maybe sleep could be a way to allocate energy that we can't allocate during the day because animals dedicate their energy for foraging, for being awake, for locomotion, and this could be a way to balance the energy into the different other functions that were proposed for sleep. Those functions were identified in few species, and we don't know whether it's widespread, whether it's true for all the animals. So basically, sleep seems to be important for growth, cognition, repair, and maintenance of the animal body. This means that sleep should be very important to maintain waking performance. Without sleep, animals just decrease their waking performance, their foraging performance, their cognitive ability, their locomotion, and do not. So this means that there is a true need of sleep, which is different from the need of rest. But all of this mostly focus on the mechanism. On the mechanism or on the development, because people study also how sleep develop across the ontogeny. But this answers much more on how animals are sleeping than why animals sleep. To better understand this, we need different approach. We need to understand the adaptation of sleep, the ecology, we need to understand the role of sleep for improving animal or related to animal fitness, and we also need to understand how sleep traits evolve across different traits across different animals. So for that, we need to develop comparative approach and study much more other species than only mammals or only mice, rats, and humans. So, why do animals sleep? We need ecology and evolution. We need to study first the macroevolution, how the different animals are sleeping and what are common and different in between them. So this will study the large change over long time scale across species, but we need also to study the microevolution, I mean small change over short time period of time within the population. But the question was initially, why is there sleep? But we can push the question a bit further, because there is multiple sleep states. Sleep is not only a behavior. Sleep is a complex, multiple states, and there is multiple substates in sleep. In mammals, so this is a representation of recording brain activity, physiology, and body temperature recorded in rats. On the top, you can see color-coded two types of sleep, in red slow wave sleep, and in green you can see, REM sleep or paradoxical sleep. REM sleep means rapid eye movement sleep, and on the opposite there is slow wave sleep, which is also called non-REM sleep, non-rapid eye movement sleep. The first line showed the brain activity recording from the top of the brain, and you can see that during slow wave sleep there is an increase in the power, in the amplitude of the brain activity, but there is also a reduction in the frequency. Then there is the muscle tone, EMG. The EMG is associated with a decrease in the muscle tone. There is a muscle atonia during REM sleep. Animals become completely flat and relaxed during REM sleep, which is not the case during slow wave sleep. There is also a lot of eye movement, the EOG here. During paradoxical sleep, there is a lot of eye movement, and these states were mostly associated with dream in humans. So that's why this is the rapid eye movement state, and he got this name because of the quantity and the high quantity of eye movement during that state. And we can see there is also some variation, like increase in the brain temperature. And I put another feature that I forgot is the muscular twitches. During REM sleep, all mammals, or most of the mammals, display some twitches of the extremities, twitches of the eyes, twitching of the whisker, twitches of the tail. So all those features are mostly related to REM sleep. But there is other features. There is many features that are associated and can differentiate the two states. This is a list, we can add more. But we can see that there is mostly iris constriction, suppression of thermoregulation, penile erection, heart rate and breathing variability, REM sleep occurring cycle. There is photogeniculo-occipital waves through the brain. REM sleep is also homeostatically regulated. An animal that is REM sleep deprived increase the REM sleep quantity specifically after that. So there is really two different states with different traits, and this just to show the complexity of the two states. So let's start with the macroevolution. How animals are sleeping. Some animals can sleep standing. So I told you about the definition of sleep, and there is some animals that usually sleep in a specific location, but you can see that some animals develop some adaptation and can sleep while standing. Is that compatible with REM sleep? How muscle atonia is related to that state? So this raises many questions. Then there is also some adaptation. It has been recently published that animals can sleep during rumination. During rumination, they recorded the brain activity, and they showed that this period of time could be used for rumination, but also for sleep. So there is a mix of the function. In monotrema, like the platypus here, we can, I need to stop the video. It's not very clear on the signal, but in monotrema there is a lot of twitches, movement of the beak, movement of the eyes, but the brain activity is not like in the other mammals. There is slow wave, but the slow wave can also occur in coordination with twitches and eye movement. So the two states just start to be a bit mixed in this animal. Another interesting thing in mammals is the sleep in cetacees. Cetacees do not have REM sleep first, and on the other way, they are not sleeping bilaterally. They sleep one hemisphere and then the other one. So they alternate their brain activity, showing that there is maybe a constraint of being in the water that push sleep to evolve in a unihemispheric sleep. And also an interesting adaptation of sleep. And the absence of REM sleep that suggests that REM sleep function can occur or do not in these animals, maybe differently. This small example is sleep in fusel, and we can see that in fusel they have slow wave sleep and REM sleep, but mostly on land. When they go in the water, they do not have bilateral wave sleep, they do not have REM sleep, they have unilateral wave sleep only when they are on land. So understanding how sleep occurs depending on the environmental constraint is very important to better understand the function of sleep. Then if we go to sleep in birds, so I was talking mostly about mammals, but in birds. Non-REM sleep and REM sleep has been mostly reported in mammals and birds, but in birds the quantity of REM sleep is much decreased and the duration of the boots of the REM sleep are very short, 5 to 10 seconds. There are much more boots, the boots of sleep in REM sleep are much more alternating. In addition, the muscle atonia in birds depend on the head position. During REM sleep in birds, they could have partial atonia, partial muscle atonia. But we find something very interesting is, like in mammals, birds also, the quantity of REM sleep in birds also decrease with the aging. There is much more REM sleep when animals are young compared to when they are adult, showing that there is a relationship between REM sleep and the ontogeny that seems to be valid for birds and also for mammals. And this is an example of another feature of REM sleep that differs slightly between birds and mammals. This was conducted by my student, and she demonstrated that normally there is pupilless dilatation during REM sleep associated in mammals. But she demonstrated that in birds it was the opposite. So this shows that feature of REM sleep could differ in between animals, and this could be maybe related to the nature of their muscle of the iris. Short example also for the ostrich that show that there is brain activity, slow wave activity related to eye movements. We can see here the slow wave activity and the eye movements associated with muscle atonia. So all the traits of REM sleep seems to be mixed depending on the species. Two examples of sleep in invertebrates recently challenging the nature of REM sleep. This is spiders, where we know that spiders are sleeping because there are some rest, sustained inactivity, probably also social. But this paper demonstrates that periodically they show also movement of the retina and twitches of the legs. Is that REM sleep? Is that awake? Is that something else? We have absolutely no idea. And the other example is what's happened to the octopus, and it's a bit the same. Periodically, when they are displaying a sustained period of immobility, we find some change, phasic change of the octopus independently of the background, which is quite unexpected for an animal that tends to hide and to mimic the environment. And more surprising, this is just an amazing video, but I don't know how to explain this. Is that something unilateral? Is that true sleep? Is that some partial activity? No idea. This is just an example of how complex could be sleep and how the external appearance or the phenotype of sleep could be complex, and how it is, at what point it is interesting by looking across the different species. So, for the question of why do animals sleep, one thing that could be done is to look at the duration of sleep across animals, the duration of the boots, the ratio between sleep and wake. And this is interesting because actually even in mammals we saw a wide difference between the quantity. Animals can sleep for 20 hours whereas others can sleep 2, 3 or 4 hours. How to explain such a great variation across the animal kingdom for a state that seems to be very important? And this is also the case for REM sleep, with animals that sometimes do not have REM sleep and sometimes that have more than 3 hours of REM sleep across the day. All that variation could be, has been tempted, I would say, to be correlated with the animal diet, the weight, the body mass, the gestation duration, the trophic level of the animal, the sleeping cycle exposure. So this was done based on all the papers that were collected to see in lab, in zoo, in the 60s, in the 70s, with different material on few individuals. And by putting this data together, there is several correlations that were proposed. But the problem is that all those correlations were contradictory depending on the paper. Some people were seeing that non-REM sleep were correlated with metabolic rate. Some with brain mass. But this is clearly not obvious and not straightforward. We don't know. And one of the biases is that the phylogeny, the relationship between animals, has not always been taken into account when making those comparisons. The bias could be that there is only few individual that has been recorded, and the variation of sleep could also maybe change depending whether they are on the wild, in the zoo, and depending on the temperature. This could affect the result, and then there is no major difference, major relationship that has been raised from those analyses. And especially for the birds, if we expect that sleep supports the same function in birds and in mammals, the people didn't find any correlation with metabolic rate or body mass. They found only one negative correlation with the exposure site and with slow wave sleep duration. So finally, the only thing that we can say about all those correlations that are interesting but do not provide a clear explanation is that sleep is clearly related to metabolism, animal size, animal diet, and also sleep seems to be related to risk. Animals are disconnected from the environment, so there is a risk of sleeping, and this risk could certainly balance the pressure and the exposure of sleep. I talked about sleep in general, and I will just go into REM sleep and sleep states. An interesting correlation was proposed between the brain and the body temperature and the quantity of REM sleep. And this seems to be that birds that are higher metabolic rates have REM sleep duration that are actually, this is the good REM sleep hour per days and monotremor. So the less quantity of REM sleep, or usually it's the blue curve. So the less the animal, the higher the temperature is, the lower the quantity of REM sleep is. But again, there is one monotremor that was recorded. Putting the definition and the boundary of REM sleep in birds is quite difficult because it's very short. But there is maybe a tendency to explore. And the relationship between temperature and REM sleep could be the key, especially because in mammals, animals that are in a thermal neutral temperature did reach their maximum quantity of REM sleep. There is certainly a link, but still need to be explored. If we go a bit more across other species, reptiles are very interesting. Reptiles, squamates, turtles, crocodilians. They are very interesting because they are sharing a common ancestor with mammals and birds. But we can see that on this graph that represents the number of species that was recorded across tetrapods, and then it's not the vertebrates. We can see that mostly birds and mammals were recorded, few squamates, chelonians and crocodilians, and amphibians, and in red it's when two states were reported. So in this group it's not clear, but on the other one there is very few still. So as I told you, non-avian reptiles, non-avian reptiles are a very interesting group because they share a common ancestor with mammals and birds that are two group homeotherm, able to maintain the body temperature high, whereas the non-avian reptiles are ectotherms, and do not produce warmth. So this is a very good model to understand whereas the two states evolve independently with the homeothermia, or whether this is an ancestral state. A few years ago, a group, and my group also, that replicated the data, found that in the bearded dragon, if the animal, if we record the brain activity deep in the brain, not at the surface like in mammals and birds, you can see an alternance between two states. You can see that I just put the video here. You can see that the brain is occupied by a sharp wave that looks like slow wave, and then switch abruptly to a desynchronized activity of the brain that looks like wake activity. In addition to this, these alternance between the two patterns seems to be mostly distributed across the night. You can see between the yellow and the blue, the alternance between the two types of brain activity, and this seems to be related to sleep. But more interestingly, when looking at eye movement, the eye movement seems to be much more predominant during the desynchronized activity, during the work, these states, during the desynchronized part. So, one explanation of this alternance between two states, a state with a brain activity that looks like wake associated with some eye movement. One hypothesis could be that lizards do have mammalian, something like non-REM sleep and REM sleep. However, if we look at all the traits that does exist in mammals, I think they check 23%, and 41 are absent. Lizards do not have muscle atonia, they do not have twitch, they do not have loss of thermoregulation because they do not have penile erection. So all those traits are absent in mammals. So how to understand that this is similar state? This is where we are actually in the understanding of sleep states in reptiles. But what we can see the evolution of sleep state in another way. During non-REM sleep, in mammals, there is also fluctuation in the level of vigilance associated with some other fluctuation in the brain activity. This is what we call infra-slow rhythm. So there is not only the alternance between non-REM and REM sleep, there is also fluctuation, periodic fluctuation that occurs only during non-REM sleep. And those fluctuations are related with the level of attention, with some noradrenergic level released into the brain that seems that the animal could be periodically awake during sleep. I think this is interesting regarding the ecology of sleep because animals sleeping are not aware about their environment. And if there is a mechanism behind that helps the animal to be periodically awake, this could be a sort of adaptation to the risk of sleep. So there is fluctuation in the brain, fluctuation in the heart rate, also during non-REM sleep. And maybe the fluctuation that were found in reptiles could be related to this. And maybe the two states in lizard were not non-REM sleep, but maybe more related to that fluctuation. So finally, about the macroevolution of sleep states, there are things that need to be keep in mind. Even during the development, the different sleep states, the different traits of REM sleep occurs periodically or happens periodically during the development. It's not REM sleep that occurs once. And if we look even with mammal, we have some animals that, like the armadillo, those have penile erection during non-REM sleep. The platypus that has twitch associated with slow wave activity, absence of eye movement in the owls, no muscle atomy in geese, and I think the Argentine technology didn't talk much about this. I should have actually. But the brain activity is not the same as the one during wave. So altogether, this forces us to move away from the mammalian-centric vision to better understand the sleep state. This means that we need more developmental study, which is clearly not well understood in all species. We need more comparative study, and we need a multimodal approach. Brain activity and eye movement are not the only signature of sleep state, and are not enough to understand all the mechanisms that are behind. So I think these 4 points are really important if we would like to better understand the sleep states, sleep in the different species. The second part of my talk will focus on the microevolution. And if I go back on that graph, you remember sleep is important for growth, cognition, repair, and maintenance of the body, suggesting that this is important for waking performance. So, if we go further, this means that there is a possible link with sleep and survival, directly for growth, for reproduction, or sleep is much more, should help survival, but the link is not straightforward. In addition, there is also cost to sleep. While animals are sleeping, they are not devoted their time for other wake behavior like foraging, reproduction, fleeing a predator. So there is a cost of sleeping. There is a benefits, internal benefits related to the performance, but there is also that cost. And another cost is they can't avoid predation. So two very important costs. So there is a balance between wake and sleep. And in addition to this, there is internal factor that could drive sleep, but there is also environmental factor. Environmental factor like abiotic factor, light, temperature, weather, human disturbance, but there is also biotic factor. Parasitism can affect sleep, reproduction, parental care, an animal that have to take care about their chicks or their youngs, they need to maybe sacrifice some sleep, availability of food resources, an animal that need to research more for food, maybe need to sacrifice its time for sleeping, and predation. Predation is one of the big questions that I would like to understand. I will have some examples later. So, if we go for the cost of sleep, I think sleep is a temporal constraint for animals. While they are sleeping, they are not doing anything else. And if you remember, there is a cost of not sleeping. So here is the balance. This is an example that on frigate birds, that an animal that has been recording while foraging, but this is an animal that can spend 10 days flying without going into the land. And they recorded the brain activity, and they have been able to demonstrate that even when flying, the animal can sleep. So they found a way to fulfill their need for sleeping. They were sleeping bilaterally, unilaterally, and also very short bouts of REM sleep. And one hypothesis of that work is that they were using the ascendant current and were sleeping during that period. But anyway, they can sleep. This is really nice, but the quantity is highly reduced. They slept only 20 minutes compared to the 10 hours or 8 hours that they were sleeping on the land. So there is maybe a cost of this. An unknown cost, but maybe there is a cost. Another interesting study on animal sleep is this study on sandpiper birds that clearly demonstrates that during the breeding season of the sandpiper in the Arctic, the male that were sleeping the less do have the most chicks and the highest reproduction rate. They sampled the genetics of the eggs, and they were clearly correlating the quantity of eggs, the quantity of descendants, with the negative decrease or the decrease of sleep quantity, showing that finally they can deal with the absence of sleep and they increase their success rate, their reproduction rate. Maybe there is a cost also of that. Maybe there is a cost for their longevity. Maybe there is a cost of their ability to fight against infection. And this we don't know. So there is still something that remains to be understood and unfold. Then we go to sleep and predation. I think this video is quite clear. I don't know if you can see it. But, is sleep risky? Or maybe it's not risky to be it's not risky to be sleeping because we are not moving. I think there is, this is clear. It's clear when animals are sleeping, they are exposed. They are not aware about their environment. I have another example. This is for mice. So, I think it's risky to sleep. So, there is a trade-off now. Animals need to sleep, but they are exposed, and they sacrifice time when they are sleeping. What kind of adaptation could exist across animals? One adaptation is the sleep, the unilateral sleep. It was nicely shown on ducks that those animals, when they are sleeping in a group, the animals that were sleeping on the border were the ones that has unilateral sleep compared to the animals that were sleeping in the center. And one of the hypotheses here was an anti-predatory strategy. And maybe this is an adaptation for predation. Another example is the study on the elephant seals, recently published. So those animals were spending a lot of time at sea for foraging. So how do they sleep when they are foraging? They are exposed to predators, sharks, orca. Are they able to sleep when they are foraging? This was the question. And they actually found that those animals were able to sleep while passively drifting to the floor, into the water. So they are just doing nothing, passively diving, And at that point, when they recorded the brain activity, they were able to show an increase in the slow wave activity, suggesting that they were able to sleep at that time. And this is exactly correlated with the depths where there is less predator. Maybe this is an adaptation to predation, an adaptation to sleep away from the predator when they are at sea. And this, I will spend a bit more time on this example because I conducted the experience. And the idea was penguins, when they are incubating, they are highly exposed to the predation of the brown spot. They are nesting on the rock nest. And they can't go away because the eggs are in the nest. The question was, how do they sleep while they have to protect the eggs against the predator? To do this, I have collaborated with the Korean Polar Research Institute, and we went in the peninsula, Antarctic Peninsula, at the King Station Station. We went to the penguin rookery here and conducted the experiment here. So we equipped the animal here and then bring back them to the nest. We put them electrodes to record their brain activity, and thanks to a micro logger that we developed, you can see the logger over here. We put the logger over the back of the animal, recorded the brain activity, recorded the temperature, the activity of the animal, the position with the GPS, depths also when they were diving, and this is the type of data that we have collected. You can see the animal. The first line represents the muscular activity. The two in the middle are the brain activity from the left and from the right hemisphere. And at the bottom, we can see the movement of the animal along the three axes. So we can see clearly that we can record the animal into the wild while he is foraging, reproducing, incubating, during his life. What do we got from those results? Actually, we demonstrated that the penguin, so in red and in green, this is where we identify sleep on the respective left and right hemisphere. What we demonstrate here is that the penguin, while incubating, this is real time, no accelerated, no slowdown. You can see that during that time, during the incubation, the penguin were sleeping in micro boots of sleep. The animal fragments his sleep to an extreme. You can see there is a clear correlation between the brain activity and the eye closure. And we show that 75% of their sleep were obtained with episodes lasting less than 10 seconds. So this is a high and dense fragmentation. And you can see in red the quantity of slow wave sleep along the day. So it's quite stable, 60% of the time. But on the opposite, on the blue line, we can see that it's almost 50 episodes of sleep per hour. So very dense fragmentation. This could be an adaptation, maintaining their awakening while protecting the eggs. Another thing that we analyzed on the data where we compared the animal that were sleeping in the border and the animal that were sleeping in the center, just like for the ducks. And we found a slight increase in the percentage of slow wave sleep for the animal that were sleeping in the border, and a decrease in the number of moods, suggesting that animals in the border were sleeping less fragmented and more, which is counterintuitive compared to what we expect. We are expecting the animal more exposed, sleeping less and maybe more fragmented. And we found the other way. So, one explanation could be the noise and the disturbance of the sociality. We think that they are more protected in the center, but maybe their sleep could be also more disturbed. So this is one explanation, and we still don't know whether the fragmentation is explained by the predation or whether it's explained by the disturbance of the conflict. So, I think this is my last slide, if I remember well. So finally, sleep seems to be related to fitness. It seems to be related to fitness indirectly by the performance that are altered when sleep is disrupted. So there is benefit of SIP, internal benefits, because if not, SIP would have disappeared in terms of the evolution. And there is a cost also. Cost because animals are less efficient, and the cost in terms of time, because when they are sipping, they are doing nothing else than sipping. Nothing else, I mean, externally. Internally, for sure, there is a role. To better understand this, it's important to understand the mechanisms of mice, rat, and so on, but this is not enough to understand why animals are sipping. We need to better understand the diversity of the sip expression, and we need to understand the flexibility of the sip. At one point, an animal is able to change its sip expression depending on the environmental pressure, and to what cost. And I think we can understand this only if we study the variability across, within, individual species and population. I think this is really, this slide, for me, is the most important because it summarizes that we need to do to better understand the role of SIP in animal ecology, and I think it's also the goal of my talk was also to show you that there is a lot of things that we don't know about SIP, whereas this is something that is present in all animals, occupying sometimes most of their time, and this is a major need. There is a major need of more understanding SIP, and I'm happy that Gabriel put this for snakes. And thank you for your attention, and I can answer your question. Thank you.